Welcome to Standard Chartered Money Insights, a podcast series by Standard Chartered Bank that brings you market views and insights on the go.
Welcome everyone to today's InvesTips podcast. Today we're going to talk about wealth planning. And to do that, I have with me today Mahesh Shahdadpuri, Managing Director and Head of Wealth Planning for Europe, Middle East and Africa. He's been with the bank for 16 years and is based in Dubai. Mahesh, welcome. It's really good to have you here. Maybe let's just start talking a little bit about what wealth planning is. Obviously, when we talk about managing high net worth individuals' investment portfolios, there's really a tendency to focus mainly on returns. However, why do you think it's important to equally focus on wealth planning?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for that. So, I think the big question is potential returns is one thing, but then how do you protect those returns once they're achieved? You see, we concentrate on the returns, not realizing that who are we making this for eventually? We're making it for our families. So, I think it is equally important to think about how to protect it for those families. Now, and wealth planning actually fosters an efficient and intentional distribution of wealth. That's one of the main goals of it. And Steve, an interesting point. Uh, Within the next 25 years, they call this the Great Wealth Transfer. They're expecting $125 trillion to move from the generation now to the next generation. This is basically the baby boom generation. And I think that in itself shows how important this topic is. Uh, I know it's not the most burning or urgent topic for families to discuss. Nevertheless, with the statistics I've given you in this day and age, I think it is extremely important tool to actually consider and put in place.
Yeah, I can imagine those being pretty difficult conversations. I guess so. We now know why it's important. That $125 trillion number does stick out a bit. Can
Yeah.
you give us some examples of why it's worth considering estate planning?
So there are many reasons, examples for estate planning, for considering estate planning, but I'll try and condense it in 5 points. I think first and foremost is preserving wealth. You see, I'll give you another statistics, Steve. Studies suggest that wealth does not sustain beyond 3 generations, and this phenomenon is actually called the third generational curse. So about 70% of the wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation, and a staggering 90% lose it by the third generation. So I believe those statistics are good enough reasons to say why you should have this in place. You want to make sure your wealth is preserved for generations to come. Another important point is optimizing tax. In certain countries, you have inheritance tax, you have estate tax, which can go as high as 40%. Now, if you have effective structures in place, effective planning done, you can mitigate those liabilities. And effectively, what you're doing is taking the burden of your family members, i.e., your beneficiaries. So that also it helps at optimizing tax. Uh, Another very important point: family conflict. You see, the irony, Steve, we spend our whole lives protecting our assets from third parties, not to realize that 85% of the problems is because of family conflicts. And I'll tell you, I mean, we've all heard about there these prominent families, such as you say, the Murdochs, the Osborns, the Jacksons. They have all one thing in common. That's family conflict over estate. So we all want eventually for our heirs, we want to reduce misunderstandings, and we always want to foster harmony amongst them. So again, wealth planning, estate planning, these enable to avoid those family conflicts. Then the fourth one is bypassing probate and preventing claims. So, when you have an effective structure, whether you're using a trust, you're using an insurance, using, joint ownerships, These can help bypass probate, protect assets from claim. And, when you're going through probate, it's a lengthy process. You can reduce that process because in that moment, your family suffer because they don't have access to the estate or the liquidity. So effective estate planning helps with bypassing probate, preventing claims. And I think lastly is aligning your values and with legacy goals. So I think this uh, to is a means, again, it's intentionally directing wealth distribution among heirs, communities, and causes that can help to align legacy goals with family values. So in this scenario, it ensures that the assets are used for their intended purpose even after one's passing.
Okay, that's really interesting, right? I mean, I guess we all assume that our families will avoid conflict after we pass, and it's amazing, as you mentioned, how many cases we're wrong to have that view. So, from a wealth transfer perspective, what do you see as the most important approaches to wealth transfers?
So I think approaches. So let me talk. I'll break it down. So you've got during your lifetime. I think during your lifetime you have certain tools which are, I think, the most basic. One, you can have a power of attorney in place. Power of attorney helps, for example, if the main patriarch or matriarch is incapacitated or cannot be reached. Power of attorney helps for the continuity whilst they're in that situation. Other ways are really direct transfers as well during your lifetime. So you can gift, for example, the voluntary gift investments or assets to your beneficiary. That is one way of doing it. You can do bequests, where some assets from the estate are specifically designated to be distributed among certain beneficiaries after the benefactor's passing. So you have a plan for that. And in certain scenarios, you can even do nomination. So where you are naming specific beneficiaries as nominee to your investments or assets. In certain parts of the world, you can even put a nominee to a bank account, such that when the passing happens of the main account holder, the nominees can take over. So these are some of the things that you can do during your lifetime.
Okay, so what about after your lifetime?
So after your lifetime, Steve, we have the most important tool, I think, which at the most basic level every individual should have, irrespective of your net worth, is a will. So I think a will is very important because it gives direction to the family. It takes away the uncertainty of how the assets are to be distributed and to whom. So I think will should be in place irrespective of whatever other structures you have, because you will always have some assets under your name. And then another thing which you can use is insurance, life insurance. Now, life insurance, again, is, I think, a very fantastic and an important tool because, you know, a lot of the high net worth clients, they're in businesses, and a lot of their assets are in their business. So, if you tell them to differentiate between your personal asset and your private assets, they will have a difficult time doing that. And in that process, all their liquidity is in their businesses. So insurance is a means, again, to create that liquidity for your family to look after your assets and them after the passing away of the individual. So it's a tool for creating liquidity, which again can be used to offset some of the tax liabilities, some of the claims, some of the loans, and also, for the business if required.
Yeah, it's interesting about how many people I speak to who don't have wills. I remember a very good friend of mine, actually, his father passed away 3 years, and still the estate has not been settled, right? Because it's very complex. But even
Yeah.
even if it's not complex, it just takes a lot of stress out of the situation if you have a will. Maybe you sort of talked immediately after lifetime. What about beyond your lifetime? We have this SC Wealth Select framework where we talk about today and tomorrow forever. So forever is really your legacy. So how do you look at it beyond your lifetime?
So yes, so we talked during your lifetime, we talked after your lifetime, and then there's a third category which is beyond your lifetime. Now, I think I would say the structures used for planning beyond your lifetime are the creme de la creme. And you see, some of the most popular tools for that is trusts and foundations. These are tools which really can lengthen or preserve your assets for generations to come if they're correctly put in place and structured. So, with these instruments, you can even have charitable institutions. So that we talked about aligning values and legacy goals. This is a means to ensure that continues with, you can have your charity and continue your family legacy. uh, Business succession, we talked about how the phenomenon of the third generational curse. When you have these structures in place, you have an effective way of business succession. You may have some children who are involved in the business, some are not involved in the business. But how do I protect all my children without dividing my business or breaking up the business that we have? So trust, foundation, other structures like that can help plan for that, which can again last for generations, not only the second, but third, fourth generations. Uh, you see, and again, we talked about liquidity planning again as well with insurance, life insurance. If you have a trust, you have a foundation, the beneficiary of these policies can be that structure such that all the liquidity comes there. And from those structures, it goes in a very constructive and a very uh, planned manner to the beneficiaries in whatever time frame. So I think these kind of structures help maintain and give that everlasting legacy for the family and continuity, which again brings family harmony. There's less disputes, and longevity for the family.
Thanks, Mahesh. That's really, really interesting. And I think, look, this is the most important topic I think we've probably covered in this podcast series yet, and probably one that doesn't get the attention it deserves. Maybe just, we're obviously running out a bit of time, but maybe just some concluding advice to high net worth individuals on wealth and estate planning.
So if my concluding advice is, don't procrastinate. It is not the most talked about or the most popular topic, but please do not procrastinate. Make a plan and work the plan. Otherwise, there's no use of even talking about it or making or saying that, yes, I will do it. I think it's a fantastic structure to do, a fantastic topic to talk about. But if you don't do anything about it, it's as good as not talking about it. And I'll end with something which I always tell clients is that you can only plan in the good times for the bad. By the time the bad time comes, it's a little too late to plan then.
Okay, I guess it's quite a somber note on which to end, but I think the point is, if you have everything in place, then it needn't be. So it's really important to get started on that journey. Mahesh, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you also, listener, for listening in. I hope you found the discussion interesting and insightful. If you'd like to find out more, please go to the link in the podcast description. And in the meantime, please take care, and we will speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Standard Chartered Money Insights, a podcast series by Standard Chartered Bank. For more details, visit Market Views on the Go on our website or click the link in the description.